Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Blind Ambition with Jack Kelly. It's your friend Rick from Blind, and today I have the pleasure of introducing Cai GoGwilt, who's the founder and chief architect of Ironclad. Before Ironclad, let's start all over. 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Blind Ambition with Jack Kelly. It's your friend Rick from Blind, and today we have the pleasure of introducing and chatting with Cai GoGwilt, who's the founder and chief architect of Ironclad. Before Ironclad, Cai worked as a software engineer at Palantir Technologies, where he developed a passion for building products that actually make people's more effective at their jobs. Believe it or not, it's possible. Ironclad is a digital contracting platform. It automates every part of contracting to unlock critical data needed to power the business forward. So thanks for coming on the show, Cai.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this.
Well, Cai, I really want to just dive into this. I don't know if you recall, I spoke with Ambrosia, 6 months ago? I'm losing track of time here. And, learned about your company. But now with artificial intelligence and GPT chat, what does that mean for contracts? And then also maybe you could kind of tell the audience too, how you're different in the way you do contracts. Because most people think like myself at first, like, what's a contract? What's the big deal? What is it? So maybe you could kind of give a little bit like how you're different.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, I think the world knows about generative AI with ChatGPT coming out last year. And at Ironclad, we're super excited about the advances in AI. Things we kept saying were like 5 to 10 years in the future, we now think are just possible today. We actually released our first GPT-3 powered feature on February 1 this year, and it's gotten incredible reception. We partnered really closely with OpenAI to release this feature, and it basically allows contract negotiators to kind of automatically do these routine things that they would always have to do by hand before. And now they can just click a button and their AI assistant kind of comes back with potential red lines to make. So it's really changing how our users are using the platform and changing the very nature of their work. And we're just so excited about the future because to me, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more coming. Yeah. So, in terms of like what makes Ironclad different, there are a lot of things, in my opinion, but in terms of like our approach to AI and how it's going to help our users, I've been thinking, we like to say AI is helping humans do more humaning. And what we mean by that is, there are all these, we've become almost like slaves to our computers, and we like do these routine tasks over and over that require us to do them, but at a volume where it just becomes repetitive. And all of a sudden we have this technology that allows the computer to do that kind of stuff, which is releasing us from being a slave to the computer and actually getting to work on the stuff that requires our human creativity, our human attention. And it's just a really exciting time to be building right now.
Just so we can understand, what you have is, for any business, there's a contract, right? There's always an agreement for something. It could be, a lease for an apartment, buying a home, buying a business, whatever the case may be. And usually it's a big pain in the butt, right? Like there's 100 pages you got to sign, then you forget something, you don't sign it, you got to get a notary doing it. So in a way, if I understand correctly, it's like you've built a better mousetrap. Is that kind of what it is? But instead of a mousetrap, it's a better contract that makes it easier to get things done. Is that somewhat fair in terms of analysis of it?
Yeah, we've built a better mousetrap. That's a fair analysis. Something we think about a lot is when your contracts are slow, your business is slow. And so speeding up contracts isn't just about getting the legal paperwork done faster. It's about enabling the business to run faster. It's, especially over the past couple of years with the pandemic and the macroeconomics changing and stuff like that, being able to pivot your business model, pivot a part of your company strategy quickly is actually of the utmost importance. And being able to have your contracts pivot as rapidly as you want to pivot to a new potential channel or something like that is critical for this. So with Ironclad, we're allowing contracts to move at the speed of business. And AI is a really, really cool piece of this, but it is just a piece of this. So yeah, for GPT-3, for ChatGPT, the thing that we're solving here is repetitive contract negotiation. So if you've got a legal team, they're probably wonderful people. You may not have interacted with them too much, but oftentimes they're doing the same thing over and over again. You're like, I want to talk through this partnership with someone and my NDA is super slow. What the heck is the legal team doing? Well, guess what? They probably have done like 5 NDAs just today, and you're like just that extra one, and that exact same issue that your NDA has, every other NDA had worded slightly differently. And what Ironclad's AI Assist is helping with is clearing that off their plate so they can actually get back to you faster, so that you can have that partnership discussion that you're trying to have, and they don't have to worry about that kind of mundane, repetitive negotiation. They can focus on, the acquisition that's ongoing that they need to like make sure that they're reviewing the right documents for, that is like absolutely business critical, rather than your NDA that they really do want to help you with, but they just don't have the time.
How, like, look, for yourself and your co-founder, what, like, with all the different kind of companies you can build, like how did you come up with say, hey, we're going to go into contract? That's it. Were you like, when you were a kid, was that like, do you want to be a fireman, police officer, astronaut, do contracts? Is that like where it started, or?
Yeah.
How did you put this, like, where did you guys come up with the idea? How did you put it all together?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to give my quick background. So I grew up in New York City, born and raised.
Where about New York City?
Midtown Manhattan.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Midtown Manhattan. I was growing up when 9/11 happened, and so after college, I went to MIT, did my master's and undergraduate in computer science and physics, and then after MIT, I was drawn to the mission of Palantir, the idea of like stopping the next 9/11, and spent like 4 fantastic years at Palantir, really driven by that mission. After leaving Palantir, and just, straightforwardly, I left Palantir because I burnt out. I was like so passionate about the mission. I was new to work. I just graduated from college when I started at Palantir, and I burnt out. I didn't know how to regulate my energy. I didn't know how to regulate myself and like, take a marathon pace to my career. And so I left not knowing what I was going to work on, but I left knowing that I loved working on a mission I believed in, and I loved talking to users and understanding what their problem was. And so my instinct was, let me start talking to users and see what kind of users I'll enjoy building for. And I talked to a friend who was a lawyer, and I asked her to tell me about her work and what she needed done. And I just like really liked how she thought about contracts, how she thought about her work, how she thought about how technology could help her with it. And I asked her to introduce me to another lawyer, and I talked to them. I talked to another lawyer, and 8 years later, and I'm still talking to lawyers. So that's how I was drawn into legal tech, and that's actually how I met Jason, my co-founder and our CEO, who himself is very, very deeply in law and truly thinks of the contract as the first piece of one of the most critical pieces of technology enabling the modern world, enabling modern business. If you talk to him, you'll hear him say he'll probably bring up clay tablets and ancient Sumeria and how this clay tablet, this contract, is this critical piece of business technology that allowed the cradle of civilization to build something great.
Yeah, the two big points. Now, Rick, I'm curious, do you notice this on Blind on the platform where people do get burnt out, where, they join up, a FANG company and they're really super excited. And then after a little bit, they realize, gosh, I just burned the brick, burned everything on both ends. Is that a common thing that happens?
Yeah, I mean, we see it on both ends on Blind, right? So there are folks that definitely, like you said, Jack, they are working at like high intensity. They're excited about the scale and like the impact, right? Like if you work on Amazon's webpage, like millions of dollars of commerce are like transacted probably like every second, every minute, right? And to have a part in that, that's really inspiring. Um, and alternatively, we see folks at startups where they're working with kind of like bare bones structures, right? Where there are no processes. They're building everything from scratch. And I think similar to you, Kai, like it's very easy to, and it's good, it's very easy to get really caught up in that mission, right? And then not take care of yourself. And it's kind of like, I think any mother is going to that's listening is going to like argue with me on this point, but when you're on an airplane and the flight attendant before the flight leaves says like, oh, when the masks come down you have to put on yours before you could put on your kids or someone else's, right? Goes against like the fundamental instincts of a mother, but like that's what you're supposed to do because you can't help yourself, or you can't help others if you can't help yourself first, right? And I think it's very easy when you're operating in quote unquote like startup mode, where you kind of like forget about that, right? Where you're like, oh man, like there's this mission. I'm like seeing like amazing results like every day, every week. Um, and I think people do burn out. They do indeed.
For the record, I don't think I would ever put on a mask before my daughter or son. Seriously, I don't think I
It's
could
hard,
not see
right?
myself doing that. Like, oh no, wait, hold on, let me put on my mask first. I don't know. I'm with your mom. I think I would have a very hard trouble doing that.
I mean, Kai, do you must see that, right? Because you took the leap as a technologist, as an engineer, as an operator, founded your own startup. Like, was there any concern that you might get into that trap of just high intensity leading to burnout yet again?
Absolutely. And I think it's something that uh, we talk about within Ironclad. I certainly talk about it with Jason all the time. Uh, we, I think we've stopped using this term, but early on at Ironclad, we used to talk about the maximum sustainable pace. You're like, look, we're in this for the long haul. We're running a marathon here. There are going to be moments where we need to sprint, but like a sprint has to be finite. There has to be like a destination or an end in mind before we start going full out. So it was definitely it was definitely a concern 8 years ago, and it remains a concern. Like it doesn't get easier starting a company, and yeah, we're constantly trying to make sure that we're running at the maximum sustainable pace because we're building a company, a team, a culture because we want to be, in large part, because we want to be a part of that. And if we burn out, we don't get to be a part of it. And so that defeats the purpose.
Kai, I really appreciate that kind of focus on culture, right? Because it seems like at Ironclad, you guys are starting from these like set of like first principles, right? Like your core values of like integrity, drive, empathy, and intent. I definitely see the empathy, right? Where you're actually talking to your potential and your actual end users about lawyers and like saying like, what do you hate the most about like the legal profession? Probably contracts, right? Saying the same thing over and over and over again, right? So clearly you've built a product for that. Um, this drive that's like underlying everything that you do, and I'm certainly sure it like is infectious and is like felt across the entire org. But one of these things that I thought was quite interesting is this concept of integrity, right? Of being something that you like look for when you're hiring an engineer. And I find it, it's very admirable, but at its face, I'm struggling a little bit with it, right? Because what does it mean to be an engineer or an operator with integrity? Because it seems like everyone should be, right? Everyone should have
Yeah,
integrity.
I love that question. Yeah, integrity is one of my favorite company values. All of them are my favorite, but integrity is my especially favorite. And let me just answer the question like straightforwardly. So integrity to us is actually two-sided, and it's about trust. It's about earning other people's trust every single day. And it's also about putting that trust into other people. So for an engineer to have integrity, how does an engineer earn the trust of the people around them? Well, when they say they're going to do something, they follow through and they do it, right? They don't just try to be the hero and then let something drop. They raise their hand and ask for help so that people have trust that if they're not able to do something, they'll be proactive about saying like, hey, I need some help. And finally, that other side of like putting your trust in other people, I think most people have had the experience of working in a team environment where someone, or maybe even the entire rest of the team, didn't pull their weight, and they were left kind of like, the lone person pulling the entire team behind them. And so we've all had that experience, and we've probably had that experience multiple times. It becomes hard to trust your teammates, thinking maybe I'm going to get stuck holding the bill again. And the integrity value is a reminder for us as gladiators to put that trust in other people sooner than we would. Like, don't force the other person to earn your trust. We don't have time for that. Just day one, they're a new gladiator, trust that the interview process like made sure that they were going to be an awesome teammate, and put your trust in them. And yes, that trust might be let down, but like, you got to put your trust in them. Otherwise, we're not going to grow as fast as we need to grow. We're not going to be as effective as we need to be. And we're not going to create the company that we all want to work at.
Well, I find it interesting, right? Because I think a common answer that other folks might have is like, oh, well, yeah, of course, we assume good intent. But assuming good intent and believing in integrity are quite different things, right? Like your take is you actually have to take an active role, right? And you have to like participate and say, like, hey, this person is just as great as me. I trust them. They trust me, right? Whereas like assuming good intent is almost like passive, right? You're just not doing anything and you're just gonna let things happen. And if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't, then we'll assess then. Like I like this approach of integrity, but I'm curious, how do you interview? Can you give us like a little behind the scenes look into how you assess or how you like suss out whether someone can actually like work with integrity?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just straight up tell you my interview question is.
Oh wow, nice.
And maybe I'll have to change it as a result. But whenever I interview, and I've done this for many years now, I ask the question. I first start by asking, when is a moment in time where you felt most motivated by your work? And I ask this because everyone's had bad experiences and you can learn a lot from digging into the bad experiences, but I want this person to be at Ironclad if Ironclad is the right environment for them. And the right environment for them is the environment where they feel motivated and excited about the work they do. And then I ask them to identify a person who exemplifies what a good teammate means from that moment in time. And I ask them to put themselves back in that moment and imagine that I'm going to be joining that team, and actually I'm going to be replacing them. And what is their advice to me for how to best work with that teammate that they told me is like the best teammate they've ever worked with. And that, what the answers I get from that are really interesting, because it helps me understand what they value in teammates. It helps me understand a bit about, have they really thought deeply about what makes this person a good teammate? Have they maybe given this person feedback to help them get better? Have they thought deeply about how they can help that other person get better? I'll often like ask a corollary question about, like, how do I approach conflict with this person? And in that kind of setting, you actually get some sense of how do they think about trust, because almost always we end up talking about how they earned this person's trust over time, or how that person earned their trust or something. So I think there's a lot that happens there. And then I flip the question on its head and I say, okay, let's say I'm replacing that person instead. What advice would they have for me about working with you? And so that gets to like, are these people self-reflective? Do they, I guess this goes to our drive and our drive value, but do they know where their areas of improvement are? Are they like actively seeking to get better? So yeah, that's my interview question. That's how I try to suss out a combination of the different values. I wouldn't recommend this interview question for all contexts. I have the privilege of working with an incredible talent team that I know and I trust is going to make sure that we're sussing out the correct competencies in other areas. And so I have the luxury of being able to ask a question that's like very purely about whether this person is going to be a good culture fit. And then I also have the good fortune of having asked this question hundreds, thousands of times, maybe more, because I truly believe that as humans, we overestimate our ability to read other people. However, we're pretty good at pattern recognition and repetitive pattern recognition. And so by asking this questions thousands of times, I'm not saying it's a good question or the perfect question, but I am saying that I think that the fast part of my brain has learned pattern recognition from the thousands of responses that it's heard.
Like that. Did you find it difficult to get into this mode of being that executive, being that kind of like last step in the interview process, when just recently you were on the other side, right? Like you yourself were like interviewing, obviously got it into Palantir, but how has that kind of shift been?
I haven't been interviewed for a job in like over a decade now. So I often wonder, like, what would I say? How would I answer my own interview? So yeah, I don't think the shift was too hard from an interview standpoint. So we have an incredible talent leader at the company, Dustin Picasso, and he's been with us for many years now. And I credit him a lot to building the company culture that we've built. He leads by example. And when he started, I remember him putting so much more structure around our interviews. And in candidate debriefs, every candidate debrief was a teaching opportunity for him. He would ask the questions, probe, to kind of demonstrate what good feedback looked like. And I took that to heart. And over the years, I've tried to basically never miss a candidate debrief if I'm on the panel. I make sure to get my feedback in as early as possible, make sure it's independent from other people's feedback. I strive to give like a clear answer, yes or no, not kind of like waver in the middle. I even try to push myself in every interview that I do to get to a strong version of a yes or a strong version of a no. And then every candidate debrief that I'm in, just like Dustin did, I try to use it as a teaching moment, try to use it as a teaching moment to exemplify and lead by example and say, this is what I think good feedback looks like. And this is how I would like you to structure your feedback as well, and how thoughtful I want you to be about it. And so since I was doing this from early on, transitioning in from doing kind of like competency interviews to kind of this more general like catch-all culture interview became natural, because I'll go to the candidate feedback sessions and I will listen to what everyone else is asking, and it's like I'm doing the interviews with all of them every time.
Can I go back to something you said before too, when you left Palantir looking to do a startup on your own, that you just started asking questions. Rick, have you found this too? Where, see, I'm new to this world, so I kind of always thought, all right, there must be a burning desire. You're going to start something up because you have this like passion from like whenever I want to do this. I just love this. But you came in a different route. You're like, all right, I'm going to be open-minded. And I'm just going to ask a lot of people a lot of questions, find, I guess, where their pain points, and let me solve that pain point. Like, Rick, do you see that like on the site where when people are starting companies and doing things like that, that they come from a space of like, all right, let me just ask a lot of questions to a lot of people and find what really resonates with me or you in your case, as a founder, and run with that.
I do. I see it on Blind, and I'm going to be a little facetious, but I find that the best founders, in my opinion at least, are a bit selfish, right? Like they start out starting the product or starting the company because they themselves want that solution, right? They are so motivated because they've experienced it firsthand, or if not, they know instantly who their first 5, 10, 100 customers are going to be, right? Because they've identified this problem that exists out there, and they just become so motivated, like almost like really obsessed about, oh my gosh, like this thing stinks, or like I want this so bad, and why doesn't this exist right now, that I'm actually like going to be crazy enough to like quit my like crazy high total compensation job, right? Like my high TC job at a FANG, and start off, right? And so we see on Blind where it often starts out like really curious or really kind of like tongue-in-cheek and saying, it's almost like a bad comedian's like stand-up joke, right? Does anyone else see this? And is anyone else annoyed by this? Or does anyone else think this sucks? And I see the like gears turning collectively where they say like, oh man, they're asking something because they've identified the problem, and now they're kind of like probing to doing the research to see like, oh, like how much, like how crazy can we get? Like, is this market really big, or am I the only one? And like maybe I'm actually going to be able to like recruit a co-founder or recruit my first few customers, right? I see it with Cai, right, where he's talking with all the like different lawyers, and he's seeing like a trend, right? Everyone's making kind of the similar complaints, and things are starting to click.
Yeah, and was there a point, Kai, where you start talking to all these lawyers, and then you're like, I think I'm onto something. There's a common denominator of what they're not happy about, and I think I could fix that pain point. Is that kind of how it? Then the light bulb went on. Go, I think I'm on the right path.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of moments in time where that light bulb kind of went off, but I'm between me and Jason, I'm the skeptic. I'm always the person who's like, I'm not sure we have product market fit. And then like 2 years or 3 years after we have product market fit, I'm like, okay, fine, we have product market fit, but I think we could like have a better business model. I'm thankful for Jason for allowing me to play this like skeptic view to his ever optimist. So for me, the moments in time where I've been like, we're on to something have been like probably at least months after we were on to something. Because I'm not ready to say that we're on to something until I see the data, and the data is always a lagging indicator.
So did you find, it sounds like you found it helpful that you had a co-founder that has a different background than you, and it seems like a different mindset and a different worldview. Would you recommend that? Is that with other, and Rick too, if you could join it, like, have you noticed with companies that have two, because sometimes they say when you have two co-founders or two chief executives, it could get kind of uncomfortable. But is there an argument to be made? Hey, no, maybe you balance each other out. So it's good to have two people with different visions.
Yeah, I mean, I feel incredibly lucky to have Jason as my co-founder. We've been working on Ironclad for the past 8 years, and we have developed just a fast friendship from not knowing each other at all before we started doing this. And that's insane, because I've heard a lot of people compare co-founding something to marriage, and it's like just meeting someone off the street and getting married to them. It's like probably not advisable.
Right.
Like even if you like really talked about it a lot very intensely for a couple of weeks, you probably shouldn't marry someone like a couple of weeks later. But we did it, basically.
Yeah, because you guys got together pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, we met in October of 2014 at this seminar for people interested in legal tech. We started co-working, and we started kind of like trying to feel each other's collaboration style out. And we knew we were interested in the same domain. So that was October. And then in December, we were like, okay, let's do this. And then the next year we were in YC, and it was kind of like off to the races.
How was it? Yeah, I hear so much about Y Combinator. What was it like to go through that?
Oh, it was fantastic for us. It was, yeah, I don't know what parts of it. It was tiring.
Oh, wait, can I cut into it? Maybe for the
Yeah.
audience too, to get a better sense of what Y Combinator is all about, for people who may not be familiar.
Yeah. YC or Y Combinator is a startup accelerator, maybe like the original startup accelerator started by Paul Graham. And it's kind of incubated startups like Airbnb and Dropbox and so many others. And we were in the summer of 2015 batch of Y Combinator with about, I think, 100 other companies. And the idea here for a startup accelerator is to kind of have this program where there are weekly-ish sessions going through kind of the keys of building a technology company. Everything from here's some legal structures that you might want to consider to here's how you create a product that people want, to how are you going to land your first customer. The things that we got from YC in summer of 2015, I mean, there were so many things, but YC is incredible at creating accountability and like kind of forcing you to go farther than you think you can go. And so every week we'd go in and take the Caltrain down to Mountain View, which where it was at the time. And we would say, okay, we're going to do, this is our target for this week. And they would just like be like, can you do 2x that? In a group setting, you're like, okay, fine, like we'll 2x that goal that was already impossible. And like every week they would do this, and it just pushed you to just try to push a little bit harder. It pushed you to not hold things back, right? Like you would as when you're creating something, when you're creating a company or a product or a business, there's this thing where you kind of want to like keep it away from everyone else until you've got it just right. And YC was incredible at kind of saying, no, look, you got to put it out there, like warts and all, because warts and all, if people like it, you're onto something. But like, if you just hone it and make it perfect and then put it out there and find out no one likes it, you just wasted a ton of time and money. So yeah, YC was incredible for us, got so much good advice there. And we were in a great space where every single one of our YC batch mates, the other companies in our batch, were able to be customers. And so it was really, really helpful for kind of very, very empathetic customer research where like they understood where we were coming from. They were willing to give their time, say like what they were planning to do, say what they liked about our product, what they didn't, and for us to be able to iterate quickly and get real traction.
Was there a lot of pressure? You said there was about another, like 100 other people. Was
Yes.
it literally like 100, that many people? So that has to be
it might be
crazy.
more
So
now.
like you're looking around, and you're like, wow, these guys look really smart. These guys have
Yeah.
We talked about mental health before. That's gotta be tough on your mental health too. Like, am I going to keep up? What's going to happen?
It is.
Or is it a very friendly kind of place?
I mean, it can be both, right? It can be both a very friendly place where everyone understands what everyone else is going through and it's like everyone's like trying to help each other out. But also under the surface, everyone knows that you're really competing with the other companies in your batch for attention. You're all going to go for funding at pretty much exactly the same time. And yeah, it was funny. We got into YC and we were like, wow, we made it. And then we like started YC and we are like, okay, cool. So now we need to be in the top 1%. We were like in the top 1% to get in. Now we need to be in the top 1% of these 1% companies. And like the odds just get more and more stacked against you. But yeah, it was one of the toughest summers that I'd ever gone through. But yeah, starting a company isn't easy. It hasn't gotten easier since then.
Any other standout companies from your batch?
I mean, so YC publishes a list of the companies that it's YC publishes a list of companies that are still going. And so in our batch, I think we're the highest ranked.
Nice.
In that. I think maybe like BitMovein is another one that might be on that list. But yeah, I mean, we all know the stats, or maybe we don't know, I shouldn't say that. You can find the statistics for company survival at like each stage, and to seed to A to B, it's a very, very like unforgiving funnel.
So you nailed it. So like you guys are rock stars. So like you came out on top. That's awesome.
Thanks. No, we feel immense gratitude. We're very thankful for where we've been able to get, and we've only been able to get here because we have a team that's like put their trust into us. And to go back to that integrity value, I'm so thankful for every teammate that's like put their trust in us and our leadership team. And yeah, we've beaten the odds so far, and we're thankful for it.
So what's next? I know you have AI, but any other thoughts in terms of building it, growing it, keeping things going?
Yeah, I mean, our mission at Ironclad is to power the world's contracts, and we're just stupidly excited about that. Because I think people look at contracts often and they are just immediately turned off of them. And so by being very upfront about our mission is to power the world's contracts, we found all the people in the world who are insane enough to think that contracts are like the most exciting piece of business technology in the past like multiple thousands of years of human existence. And we have the opportunity to take this like 10,000-year-old technology, the business contract, and bring it into the modern age. And right now that means bringing it into the, digital collaboration, the way we collaborate on things is different now than it was 10,000 years ago. The way we collaborate on contracts is remarkably the same, hasn't evolved as much. And so we get the opportunity to move contract collaboration into the modern age. Now we're talking about AI, right? For thousands of years, if you want someone to help you with a contract, it's got to be another human. All of a sudden, we're in an age where AI is able to do more and more and more to help contract professionals be able to do better work, to be able to scale themselves. And then as for the future, we think that contracts are the core unit of business, the core unit of commerce. And so what you can do with that, I think the possibilities are endless.
Now, is being one of the few unicorns out there that's really excited about contracts and legal tech kind of a requirement if you want to work at Ironclad?
Yes, you you don't need to be passionate about contracts right now if you want to work at Ironclad, but if it turns out you're not passionate about contracts, you will probably not have a great time here. Or if you can't become passionate about contracts.
Guys, you know what's interesting? Rick, we may have spoken this before, and I apologize if I'm being redundant. NYU professor Scott Galloway has this thing that really caught my attention, where he was saying when people come to NYU to speak, and a lot of times they'll they made their money in doing things that you would say this sounds boring and terrible, and who would want to do it? And his thing is in every commencement speech, you'll always have follow your passion, go after that, follow your passion. And he says the opposite. No, that's bullshit. It's just the opposite. You find something like you did, you contrast something where there's a pain point, right? Something that could be other people aren't going to think about it. You do that. And then what happens, you become successful. Then you become passionate about it because you're successful and rich. So it's okay, now I'm passionate about contracts, or I'm passionate about widgets, or I'm passionate about whatever, because I'm really successful now. People actually want to talk to me now before they didn't. And this is great. So it's it's almost reverse, where you get that passion when you're oh, I'm doing really well, I'm growing it. So it's interesting that you talked about, passion, and then looking at contracts where, maybe at the beginning, all right, you might not be so passionate about X, Y, and Z, but if you're good at it and you can build it and you can grow it, then you become super passionate about it and you're super excited, right? So I think I wonder if that's an attribute that entrepreneurs, would need to have, thinking, okay, I got to find that pain point like you did, talk to a lot of people, try to figure out what works, what doesn't, get their opinions, what doesn't work, and then be, excited about it. And then as time goes on, get really super passionate, and then you keep growing and building. You become #1 in the Y Combinator batch of 2015. And then you become, it become a unicorn company, and it keeps going.
That could definitely play into my personal psychology. I'll go a little bit further though and say, I think there's something to, there's, not to get too existential, but
Go for it.
As humans, we crave being part of something with other humans. And so I previously talked about how I'm a very mission-oriented person, I'm a very team-oriented person. And the mission, there are many missions that I know that I would never get passionate about. But there are many missions that I think I could get passionate about. And there are, I think, many gladiators who could get excited about a different mission. But coming together with those other gladiators around digital contracting, there's a sense of togetherness, a sense of unity, and being among people who are like you. That's just really motivating, and I think goes to that core need as a human to belong.
I really appreciate that lesson, because I think it's something that is very easy to forget, right? I see on the blind community a lot, there's very ambitious people. It's the reason why this podcast is called The Blind Ambition. And they chase after the next cool thing or the fad, or it's very easy to get into kind of like the peer pressure of, okay, well, I need to keep up and also get a high TC job, or I need to move to Austin because everyone else is moving to Austin, or whatever it might be. But I think your approach is right? It's very important, I think, to really figure out like what works best for you, right? And start from kind of that foundation aspect
Mm.
to really like build out your career. So I appreciate you coming on the show and really kind of reminding us of that.
I'm absolutely happy to.
Well, thank you so much, Cai. That was great. Thank you so much for speaking with and sharing your story. And that's great, man. Good for you. This is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate you having me on the show, and great to talk to both of you.
Thanks.